The opinions expressed on this show do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of Return the Jewels. Also, there's explicit language. And welcome back. It's episode 15. We just got off of a 1 week break. Welcome to the new year. It's 2021, even though I'm recording this on the 22nd of December, in interest of transparency. But I've been kind of trying to like stack the episodes a little bit. The content itself is evergreen because the nature of these conversations is so cyclical. So just gonna, we have a few episodes in the bank, and it helps me to be able to stick to this weekly production schedule while also, trying to get things together to be able to scale at some sort, or, build some sort of infrastructure. It's kind of like it's a very rag and bone show. I don't know if that's the right idiom, but anyways, if you know me personally, which I feel like a lot of the people that watch do, and thank you, DM me if you have any like feedback or suggestions for what I need to do to grow, and different tips and stuff, because I'm still just trying to figure this out like a lot of people are. But that being said, it's the new year. I guess technically this would be season 2 of Return the Jewels. And so, like a new year, we want to start with a new friendship. So this week is my new friend, Yogi Paliwal. So we have a mutual friend. He referred Yogi to be on the podcast because the nature of Yogi's content is, kind of in line with the conversations that we're having. He's a stand-up comedian. He's an actor. He has a very good podcast. It's a real dope podcast. It's called Grubs Takers, and that's GRUBSTAKERS. And each episode examines a different billionaire, and basically goes into a deep dive about it. And they do a lot of research, and it's dope. So this episode, we talked about billionaires, we talked about representation, we talked about generational wealth, we talked about minority palatability, self-defense mechanisms for, growing, thriving, but really just adapting. And so, it's a real interesting conversation. I think it's kind of long, but we also had an appreciation segment. We did this Coldplay music video with Beyonce called Hymn for the Weekend. Yeah, Hymn for the Weekend. And, just kind of overlaid it, tried to take down the music so that we don't get like a copyright strike down. But, you can hear Yogi talk about it during the thing. So that's in here in this video. If you're listening on any of the audio platforms, as soon as you hear the appreciation segment, you can go ahead and pull up the Coldplay video to watch concurrently with the commentary. But, that being said, let me stop wasting your time right now and let's get right into the episode. We got Yogi Paliwal, dope dude. Check it out.
I'm recording.
All right, I pressed record as well. So
Cool.
3, 2, 1.
Are you? I mean, if you can line this up, it's not that hard to line things up.
Yeah, no, it's not.
No. Do you want to know what we do on my show? So we'll count to 4. I'll do 1 and then 3, and you do 2 and 4. All right.
Okay. So
1.
3. Wait. No. 2.
3.
4.
Great. So now when you line things up, you'll just look at you saying 2, 4, and I look at me saying 1. It's not that hard.
Okay, but we both definitely pressed record before all of that botching. So I'll just I'm gonna keep that all in there. So if you're watching now, what that whole thing was just us trying to sync the audio and video because Yogi himself is editorially inclined, technically editor tech. So he's sending me a separate audio. So this might be our best audio episode to date, but to be seen. But today we have Yogi Paliwal. Paliwal. Did I say that right?
I mean, it's a W, but I accept V's instead of W's there. But yeah, Yogi
Should it
Paliwal.
be
Yeah,
a V? Should it be a V though? Like, because I
I
mean,
don't think
it's
it.
anglicized with the
It might be. I think that could be the case where it should be a V. But I mean, honestly, I don't. As
like.
long as you get Yogi right, it's not that big a deal.
Isn't it like our stuff is like V's or W's and W's or V's?
Yeah, I mean, I had that issue growing up because like my folks had accents, and I lived in Washington State. But like you grow up in a relatively actually I don't know if you know this, but like news anchors when they're regional, when they want to go national, they study the accent of the Pacific Northwest because we have such a neutral accent.
I did not know that.
Yeah, when I was in when I was in journalism school briefly, I learned that. So I grew up with the accent that like if you're from let's say Omaha or if you're from like a small town in Vermont, they go, all right, to get all of your local dialect out, go study the Pacific Northwest, and it's like Oregon to Vancouver. It's not just Seattle, but like that region. We speak very. I mean, honestly, it's kind of boring, but it's very radio friendly, if you ask me.
So I shed the stigma of having a southern accent by learning your accent as a kid, essentially.
Technically speaking, yes. I mean, is it my accent? It's whose accent is it really? But yes, technically speaking, if you're like I grew up in Louisiana or New Jersey, where people traditionally have a very thick accent, but
Right.
then I watched a lot of like CNN, then technically speaking, you may have observed someone who had an accent that was
Right.
from the.
But you live in the source, and my exposure is derivative at best.
I mean, at the end of the day, we both are choosing to have a voice that's not a suspect. Like, I don't sound like this because I wasn't afraid of racism and also saw my
Yeah.
folks deal with people disregarding their opinion or their stance because of an accent. Or, I mean, even something as small as like, and I've been guilty of this as well, where somebody might not speak English perfectly, so you think to yourself, oh, they don't know, like they're
Right.
dumb, and it's like no, they just don't speak the language perfect, but that doesn't mean their brain is less capable in any way whatsoever.
I've noticed a mind blowing thought in some conversations I have, which is not
Hmm.
really a mind blowing thought. It's just very normal. It's like, yo, bro, people are very smart in other languages. Like,
Yeah, yeah, incredibly intelligent. The only thing they can't do is speak the way you speak, and that should matter not at all. Do they do math correctly? Or is their brain surgery skills the same? Oh, well, Chinese brains and American brains, they're a little different. It's like,
bro, it's
no,
like, no, man, they could they can like dissect poetry at a very heady level in Hindi, not maybe not
yeah,
in
yeah,
English.
right.
And it was like, oh, but yeah, we never think that. Do you think that is growing up being indoctrinated with American exceptionalism? Is that a byproduct of that?
My voice becoming this way. Is that what you're asking
No,
me?
no, no, no.
Oh,
Having an implicit bias
oh, I see what you're saying.
of thinking that someone with an accent might not be, you know,
Yeah, yeah, of course, 100%. I think that it goes back to just colonialism, but also that we, Indian people specifically had the British Raj just up in their shit for so long, and like it was like, oh, who's got money? Or people that don't speak the language we're speaking, and so there is a fetishization of like, because so I think that anytime an accent is used, especially in stand up, where the accent is the joke, is just lazy writing. Like it can
yeah.
be pulled off in some ways. Dave Chappelle's got a great one, but like for the most part, it's like, oh, and then this person said this, and it's just a bit in an accent. It's like, all right, well, That's not a joke. That's just you preying off the fact that your audience is racist, and that's technically a crutch, but that's also not untrue. So I kind of understand it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. I agree with you. I agree with you. I think that there's levels to, maybe not to the writing, but how the writing is perceived, at least. And you can argue as a content creator as much as you want
Mm-hmm.
with how sophisticated or unsophisticated the people receiving your message may be, but also it's like, yeah, there's definitely a fucking level to the writing of just like, yeah, the accent is the punchline, the skin color is the punchline.
Right. Well, do you know the Chappelle joke that I'm referencing where he does like a brown accent? The bit is he's like, I was on a plane and there was a terrorist incident and a guy stood up with an AK-47. He went, "Everybody get down,"
Oh
which
yeah.
was crazy because he was Chinese. And, like, it's just like such a perfect
So,
little gag right there, you know. But that the writing is better. He didn't
right.
shoot. Yeah.
The way I think about that kind of thing is like, and I talked to Fani about it. Fani couldn't be here today with us, but he's feeling a little sick. But the way I think about that is like, we talk about like not compromising the come up,
Sure.
right? So Dave Chappelle saying, doing that accent and then being like, oh, but he was Chinese. He doesn't compromise, like people like us who are used to being stereotyped with the Apu voice or whatever, or Middle Eastern people,
Mm-hmm.
that like they still have a come up in that joke because he's making fun of the accent he just did. You
Yeah,
know?
and it's I think that the term inclusive sometimes can come off a bit. I think that when people use the term inclusive, that there's a group of people that shrug that off. But like a joke like that, he goes, "Well, this group of people would hate this joke if I don't save it." So he's just running the numbers. Really, he's like,
Yeah.
"Oh, that group. If that group wants to laugh at this, I need to add another tag." And then if you're a bigot and thought the voice was funny, you get a laugh. And if you're someone that was like, "That's how like people that I'm related to talk," then you also get a laugh. So it's like it's really just, hey, what can you do to reach 100%? And that's the goal.
So a comedian, like any politician, is really building a coalition.
Oh, 100%. I think like if you really look at it, comics are better than politicians,
Yeah.
but politicians have more power. But if you ask me, like, that Dane Cook army he had in like the middle of the 2000s between like
Uh,
MySpace and AOL, like if that was like a fucking general, or like if that was like legit, like, oh yeah, Dane controls
bro,
Dane Cook
he could
controls
have
like
he could have turned those kids into tiki tortures if he wanted to.
yeah, very easily. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Easily.
I always think about how Tila Tequila was like, being a Nazi is cool. Like 3 years before, she was so close. Really a
Yeah,
trendsetter.
and then PewDiePie picked up in her
Hmm.
tracks, probably.
Yeah, that's right. But yeah, I mean, it certainly is like, So I like went to before I dropped out, I went to like journalism and broadcast school. So like
Yeah,
I like had like, this is how you make your voice sound better. But a lot of that came from like, oh, if I don't sound regular, unfortunately, then I won't be able to utilize my voice. So it 100% comes down to like, hey, you need to learn how to talk like everyone around you, because if you don't, they won't listen.
remember that South Park episode where they do the news show and then Cartman pulls a side token and he's like, "I need you to look black but not sound like." And
Yeah,
that, honestly, when I think that episode came out when I was a kid, it didn't really hit me until later,
right.
like much later, like the significance of that thought of just like, oh, our discourse has to be presented in a palatable form
Hmm.
always.
Yeah.
And what is the palatable form? The Pacific Northwest accent.
Yeah, I think that like strangely enough, Nick Cannon is a perfect example of someone who has been against the whitewashing of black culture, but then also participating of it. So it's like a tough thing
Yeah,
because it's like Nick Cannon is just black Ryan Seacrest, and Ryan Seacrest has, I think, I'd have to look this up, but Ryan Seacrest has way more power, influence, and money than Nick Cannon
right.
does, and the really difference is that Ryan Seacrest doesn't ever take a stance, and for his own career doesn't need to. Whereas with Nick Cannon, I think that being told that you're a bit of an Uncle Tom is something that he's like, man, fuck that noise. I would like to not be that. But then you lose your contracts. You lose what it means to have the status symbol you got, and that's intentional. Ryan Seacrest doesn't need to come out and be like, I don't know, I support Palestine. But if he does, well, them iHeartRadio checks start getting cut up.
No, for sure. No, I mean, if you think of, okay, what I'm thinking now is like with minorities, people of color, right? You look at a color swatch, this color swatch, and the darker the shade gets, like Nick Cannon, other minorities, entertainers get can always be labeled as tokens, or not necessarily labeled. They can also act and be tokens,
Sure.
right? But they have to fight and actively work to be palatable, whereas Ryan Seacrest, by his existence, is palatable. It's for him to fuck up, right? By taking by taking a stance against Israel, is how he fucks up, right? Or
Yeah.
by like, but with Nick Cannon, it's like I got to reform my behavior. I got to code switch constantly to be this palatable, like I got to create so much character to be a non-character.
Yeah, and it really just boils down that like there is a large portion of the audience that thinks fuck your existence, and if you can't cater to them as well, you're not valid. And it's like, oh, but why? Why do I have to entertain my oppressors? And it's like, because they exist, and as a entertainment marketing company, we need you to be considerate. It's the same that's going on with like Disney and China, and like how they're like, oh, how about you take the black people off the posters? And it's like,
Yeah.
what if China was just like, oh, fuck women, like just theoretically, right? So there's like no more women on posters. I mean, that's also already something that is more common than not. But like, at what point do we dictate what we do to the people that pay us? And in the case of entertainment, it's often if you're not willing to dance how they want you to dance, we don't need you. We'll find 15 other people. I remember like this is pre-Aziz scandal. I think he was talking about like how there's not as many brown people in media and stuff, and he was like, when they need another superhero, they go to the tiny villages of France and find a supermodel, or they go to Australia and find another Hemsworth brother. Like they find them, and it's like, so how can we say that there isn't enough when to get someone that just looks like a buff white dude will go to any length to find an individual?
Bro, and we got like whole villages of Palwans. That all they eat, they eat are like 12 eggs a day, and they like train to just be big people.
I've thought about this for a long time. I'm excited for the Indian Beyonce. At some point, there's gonna be a female Indian girl group.
Bro, there's already an Indian Beyonce. It's Beyonce.
That's right. She can
but I
change
think,
her culture on a whim.
I mean, I think I guess you're leading into a bit or a segment that we have on this show. And I prepped you beforehand. And so one thing we do on this show is it's a segment called Appropriation or Appreciation. And so in this, we find like a case study, and I present you with a case study, and you make a judgment on whether this is appropriation or if it's appreciation,
okay,
or if I'm presenting you with a false dichotomy, and maybe the two aren't mutually exclusive, or maybe the two in themselves are false. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to share this clip, and when we put this episode out, we may not be able to play the audio since it's obviously a very copyrighted thing.
Right, of course.
But I'm going to share this clip, and I want to get your reaction.
Yeah, this music video sucks, and it's frustrating because, like, I think that there were at the time there were like a lot of like Indian people being like, "Fuck this music video." for many reasons. I think some of
Yeah.
it was like anti-blackness against Beyonce dressing up in Indian garb, because that always exists in
Yeah.
Hindu nationalism, like fuck black people. And I don't know. I just think that like any group from London or the UK that's like India, we should continue to use them as a symbol for our greatness. It's like, read the room, guys. Come on now.
Yeah,
Like,
there's a sense of cultural tourism there. It's like, why does Slumdog Millionaire win an Oscar? Because of the pretty colors and the brown
yeah.
kids with the dirt on their faces.
And it's like, if Slumdog, I think I would care less about this shit if those Slumdog kids' homes wasn't demolished a few years later. And so now there can't be a Slumdog 2 because them kids ain't got a home.
You're talking about to build like the Ambani house?
Yeah, I believe so. Yeah. The Ambani Tower.
Yeah, I said house.
Yeah. Like it's a shack.
Like it's visible beyond the horizon, that house.
Bro, it's not a house. Like it's one of those things where like I learned recently that the British Raj period of the British Empire is not covered extensively in like the UK schools. And I learned this because I was reading on Reddit that like Japanese naval boats will have curry competitions, and they think curry is a British cuisine because they were introduced to it by the Brits. And like the naval boats all have curry competitions, and so it's like I'm happy y'all having curry competitions, but the gall for the UK to be like, yeah, that's us, we do curry. Like what the?
Well, technically, okay, bear with me on this.
Go on.
Here's why they're right.
Wow, love, you traitor.
Because there was Indian food was so hard for them to pronounce, they called everything curry.
Right.
So anything ethnic is curry. And so they've just literally stripped everything of it. Like we know the names of the different ingredients and dishes and everything, and they're just not like, it's not like this is yellow curry, this is red curry.
They don't know chanaka dal. They're like, right? It's all curry to us.
Right. It's all so it's like, yeah, maybe they got that kind of thing from the British where it's just like, yeah, we're not really gonna do anything beyond the second result on Google in terms of how we approach things. Like,
but I mean, like, it would be like cats in Mexico being like, oh yeah, sushi's from America, I've had a California roll. Like, it's like, come on, man. Like, and so I get what you're saying in terms of like,
I'm totally being a pure contrarian.
No, I completely, and I don't disagree with you. Yeah. And I do comprehend that, like, that's where they thought it's from, so it's no big deal in terms of like, it's not a like, fuck you, I know where this is from, but I'm not going to call it what it is. It's just kind of a culinary misunderstanding. And this happens always. Like, one of my favorite Indian dishes is one that I really appreciate the journey of. Pav Bhaji is like Indian sloppy joes for our non-Indian knowledgeable folks here. And that dish is actually inspired by the Spain spice trade. They were making it in like old school Mumbai, and it traveled up through the north where they're more vegetarians, but that's why you get like a thing of bread with it, and no other Indian dish has that. So now that history is not necessarily all that well known, but because of that spice trade, they were doing that in Mumbai, and then it had meat in it probably then, but then as it traveled to the north where there were more vegetarian regions, dabas picked it up, and that's
eggplant and carrots and stuff.
Yeah.
Right. That's the only thing with bread rolls.
Yeah. So, like, that's great, and I know the story because nobody in India has ever been like, oh, yeah, Pav Bhaji, we did that shit. You know, it's like, no, it's just food. We fucking... I looked at the history of it, and I think it's fascinating.
Bro, we didn't do Pav Bhaji? My whole childhood is ruined. I'm mad. I'm so angry.
So, like, you know, it's unfortunate, but, you know, if you a Western cat and you love Pav Bhaji, you ain't, you know, this ain't authentic Indian. I mean, sure, it's been around for hundreds of years now since the Spanish spice trade.
I have to start a street. I need to start a street Indian street food restaurant and claim full ownership of Babaji. That's how I will become a successful.
You can't get like great Babaji. I haven't had great Babaji in New York yet because you need that like that dava that's just been caked in years of making Babaji and like a guy that stirs it every 40 minutes because he forgot. Like there's something
You
about.
gotta risk cholera every time you eat good Babaji.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's
Yeah.
the way to do it correctly. If you survive Babaji, you know you had a good experience. Um, so like I usually am not someone who gives a fuck about cultural appropriation because I think at the end of the day, like I remember my brother a little while ago was complaining about the Indian cities that went back to their original name. So instead of Bombay, it became Mumbai, and
Yeah.
instead of Bangalore, Bengaluru. And he was like, "Fuck these
That
names.
was
They
like
ain't
the
got."
late '90s, right? When that
Yeah,
around, yeah.
I think it might have been even closer to the 2000s, but late 90s is correct. Sorry. But anyway, he was like, "Fuck these old names. The names that the British people came up with are like they got like legacy." And I get why, as Americans, we feel that way, but it's just the name. It doesn't fucking matter. And to a similar issue, a lot of the mountains in the Pacific Northwest are named after the explorers that walked up them first and said, "This was mine." So like we have Mount Rainier and Mount Adams and Mount Baker, but like they have traditional names from the tribesmen that grew up in that region. And with Mount Rainier, they could call it Mount Tahoma or Mount. Let's see, I have it in my notes here. Mount Tiswak, which means like to touch the sky, and that's cool. But similar to the like Black Lives Matters emblems on football helmets and stuff, a symbol means much less than actual concrete change.
Yeah.
And so I'm less concerned with like a person wearing a sombrero and being shitty, and I'm more concerned with knowledge itself being commonplace. This thing I told you about Babaji is not nobody cares about, but now that you know it, it's awesome, right?
I
And
mean, just the thought that I had never thought about there being no other Indian food with like Western rolls,
yep,
and it all makes sense now. Like, oh,
yeah,
no wonder.
right, right. And it's not like you were being an asshole. It's not
Uh,
like you were like. It's just you've learned something and you're
no,
better
no,
for it.
we invented the roll too.
So like in that vein, I'm like, I care. I usually don't care as much about cultural appropriation.
Yeah.
So like with this Coldplay video, it's stupid, and I think that Chris Martin is a piece of shit for not recognizing, hey, the song about us getting stoned and drunk on the weekend. Maybe we don't need to fly to India to shoot a music video. Would have been nice, but
And we're
I care.
British, remember? we should think about this thing again.
Right, right. I care less about that and more that, like, hey, British school system, how about you teach the people that are coming up that you suck? I mean, like, it would be the same as if U.S. education had zero Native American culture in their curriculum, and even that's not good enough.
Yo,
But
did you go to India a lot growing up as a kid?
I went every year. Yeah.
Okay, so here's something I noticed. I don't know if you ever noticed it too. A lot of British tourists, like in big, like Delhi or Mumbai and shit like that. Uh, did did you always notice that in the heat times that they would always dress like they're on safari?
Oh God, yes. Oh yeah.
Like you noticed
Not,
that as a kid, right?
yeah. Oh yeah. And so yeah.
Like they're the vest with the pockets and
Yep.
the brim.
Yep. Yep. That hat that screams Jumanji when you really look
Yeah,
at it,
the
you're like,
Jumanji hats.
you ain't in Jumanji.
That wasn't just
You're
me noticing that, right?
no. You're drinking Bisleri and you're I don't know outside your hotel room. You're fine, dog. Yeah, but that oh yeah. I went to a camera shop recently and they had one of them vests, right? One of them white vests, safari vests, and I was with a friend and I was like, you buy a vest like this and you think to yourself, okay, now I can finally take the photos I want to take, Pre-vest, I don't know, I don't know what focal length is good, I don't know about which flash. You get that vest on, you're like, okay, now I can take photos of elephants if I really want to.
Yeah, this vest is the first step in buying my ticket to India.
But yeah, so I mean, like, it's tough because I think that you know, and like, you know, there was backlash when this shit came out because like Beyonce's dressed as a popular Bollywood star. I mean, it's just stolen. It's just stolen valor. It's just stolen material that
Oh,
Coldplay's using
Valor.
to
All
make
right.
themselves look cool. And I think that if anyone goes, "Hey, Coldplay, you guys know that, hey, big fans of stuff. I love Yellow, you know, but you guys know that the British Empire took like 40 trillion from India. Yeah, oh yeah, trillion with a T. It's actually 42 to 46 actually, but we don't know the numbers because you know you kind of burned those books if you know what I mean. Oh yeah, that Heart of Hope diamond, all that shit. Oh yeah, none of that shit was yours. Oh yeah,
Hence the titular jewel in our pod in this podcast name.
that's right, that's right.
Yeah.
And so it's something that, you know, I don't expect people that are shitty. People that have the knowledge may remain shitty, and that's kind of okay because it's like, well, if you weren't going to be good, you weren't going to be good before you learned how to be better either. But to blame people of obliviousness that they're being piece of shit, it's very frustrating. Like it's like I just think that I would be more impressed with knowledge of this shit being more commonplace than like with the whole mountain thing I mentioned. One
Yeah.
of the guys I read in New Zealand, they just did both names. They just hyphenated it. We don't care. Fucking the name of this mountain, it's the Western name and the fucking name the Aboriginals or whatever the group in New Zealand is called them. And guess what? That's not great. Doesn't bring back. It doesn't fucking change the murders and the rape and the pillaging and stuff. But it's at least a recognition of like, oh yeah, by the way, this shit was called that. And then a motherfucker can go, I can't pronounce that. I don't want to say that because I'm a piece of shit. Or they can go, oh, I know how to say this. It doesn't, you know, it takes very little to have empathy against what has been done in the past. But you have to take the initiative to be like, hey, I probably shouldn't be shitty.
I feel like you can have so much sociopathic apathy towards other cultures just if you have a fear of being embarrassed by mispronouncing something.
Yeah, you know, the worst my name has been pronounced in stand up was never intentional.
Was it a Yagi?
No, no, it was I don't even remember how they pronounced it, but it was a person that just had really bad stage fright. Like they were just like they were very new in stand up. It was in San Francisco, and they were like, okay, coming up to the stage, we have Yogi, you know, like just like, you know, stuttering and so like that
He's a
motherfucker isn't.
ghost.
I show up in like a white sheet on my head, and like, thank you, I am you, you know, like, no, but like, you know, that guy's not trying to be, you know, and I've hosted and fucked up names and shit, so it's like, you know, it's a part of the gig to get that shit wrong, and also how fucking imagine if I was the type of guy who's like, this fucking piece of shit can't pronounce a brown name. How about you read a fucking book, you piece of shit? You know, like he's trying. So you know, it's all good, and also like, so my Yogi is not my legal name, but I've just been called Yogi my entire life, and so to have that as a crutch as
And I
well, to be
guess
like,
it's probably Yogesh.
it is Yogesh. Yeah,
Okay.
you got to keep the gay in there.
I put the
um,
gay in Yogesh.
and so like, you know, like even that alone has tremendously allowed me to be accepted by anglicized people than if I had to grow up and be like, hi, my name is Ramayan Siddhartha. Like, okay, bro, can you fucking roll back with that? You know what I mean? Like, that's, you know, so
That sounds like a
I've been.
good character name for a Brian Reynolds movie.
Ryan
This is my
Reynolds.
Indian friend from childhood growing up in private school. His name is Ramayan Siddhartha.
Ryan
We
Reynolds
call
just
him
rolls
Ram
up.
for short.
So, you know, I've been very fortunate in that, like, I haven't had to deal with a lot of that shit. But, like, yeah, man, this fucking hymn for the week. I mean, even if the song was like, hey, the British Empire was bad, and then just the rest of the song, I'd at least give them, like, all right, well, they're trying. But this video is just a fucking straight cash grab.
Yeah, cultural tourism, man, the pretty colors and all that stuff. But hey, you know, I mean, I guess if you want to do something about the poverty and quality of water with like donations and, you know, go, that's great. But
like that money goes to that. Come on, bro. It's
No,
fucking
I know.
Indian fat cats sitting on stacks, stacks on stacks
It
on
does.
stacks.
It doesn't. And I bet
Yeah.
the money that they probably allotted for that, and they think that is going through that, filters through some Indian dude that looks like a 50-year-old version of me with a couple of gold chains and one of those leisure pajama suits on that's all buttoned up, but it's
Oh yeah.
it's all
I
all
love.
baby blue.
No, so you spent your childhood going back to India?
No, I mean not every year, but
It's fine.
we go every now and then for a few
Do
weeks.
you find, because I find this is true with Indian kids that grew up in the U.S. that never went to India, their image of India is from a emotional, um, rose-colored look from their parents. And
Yeah,
so the way they look at India is like, India, fucking Sahara, it's the best. And you have to be like, I've seen like motherfuckers with like elephantitis at train stations. Like, you don't know Jack. And they're like, no, no, no. From what I understand, it's better than anything that's ever existed. And it's like, oh, if you want to feel that way, bro, but I'm telling you that ain't
I
the
didn't.
case.
I didn't. You didn't. Well, you didn't have to share the same mosquitoes as a pile of dog shit you just stepped in.
Right, right. You ain't had diarrhea on an
I mean, I'm
Indian
sorry, cow shit,
plane.
cow shit.
Sure, yeah. The the dog shit we wash away immediately, but
Yeah, not
the cow
not as
shit
much
is
dog shit
fertilizer.
as cow shit.
Exactly.
But I mean, then again, criticizing displace as a kid growing up for what third world conditions, sure, like
Hmm.
lack of
Yep.
hygiene, lack of infrastructure, shit like that.
And mind you, sorry to cut you off, love, but like all that shit caused by the fact that motherfuckers roll in and just jacked trillions of dollars
That's
worth of shit.
exactly, yeah. That's
Not
that. You
like,
didn't cut me
not like,
off. You didn't cut me off. You
no, yeah,
literally just cut off the slow transition I was gonna do.
yeah, because like growing up, I've read the like old school scriptures and stuff, and they talk about the vast amount of wealth that was contained in that nation, and then to know that like the stereotype of the people like me are starving, I was like, how can I guess we were rich during Egyptian times, right? Like that's how it felt, and then to be like, oh no, they just they just jacked everything y'all got within like a 300-year period, and then when they were like, oh no, Germans bombing us now, they're like, well, I guess we got to leave India. That's kind of really what went down and all that. You want to know some crazy love that I just learned recently?
It was about Winston Churchill.
Apparently, it's not about Churchill. It's actually one that I think will cut you even deep. I was watching TikTok with my wife, and there was a guy that was speaking Maya, the Mayan language, to a motherfucker that was selling oranges on the side of the street. Right? A lot of people that are now considered Mexican looking are actually from the ancestry of Mayans, or at least they
Right.
speak Maya for whatever reason. And I noticed that the word for yes was ha. And I was like, that's Hindi. Like, that's like, I can
Yeah.
recognize that off the bat. And I remember when I was looking up the fact that Native Americans called Indians, I also learned that in the native tribes of like South America are also called Indians. And Germans actually like dressing up like Native Americans. It's fucked up. It's a whole thing. Germany is like, hey, cut it out. And these German people are like, no, we love cosplaying as Native Americans. But that's beyond the point right now. But what I did learn, though, is that the Mayan language has some similarities to Hindi, but then the Mayan, like spiritual, what they believe, has like their version of Hanuman, their version of Shiva. Like it lines up pretty well. And there was a Spanish
Wow.
Catholic explorer who rolled in and burned all the books. He was like, and when they asked him, like, "What'd you burn?" He was like, "Just the silly nonsense that they believed, and not the shit that's correct." But I believe that there could be a link between the Mayan civilizations and India from the ice bridge potentially, but even to people traveling via boat and stuff. So we might have a connection to them potentially as well.
Yo, you never think about how much burning is involved with whitewashing.
Yeah. Oh yeah. But that like you know what's crazy about that, love? I learned that from a
Holy.
TikTok where a guy was speaking Mayan, and when he said "huh," I was like, "That's too similar." I know that shit is it could be Hindi.
Right. Like another thing, fate. A word for fate is kismet,
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah, yeah.
in Hindi it's kismat. Like,
Yep. That's right.
like I learned that as a kid, and I was like, wait, what? Like that's, but like there's There's all those
But
connections in
but
language.
that right there, if I didn't spend them summers going to India and like my folks, not teach me Hindi but speaking Hindi, I would have never known that I could, obviously everything I'm saying, I'm not saying like, no, I'm gonna be a fucking Mayan.
Right. Donald Trump's not
Yeah.
going to be calling you Pocahontas.
Right. So I'm not trying to be like, I'm all my fucking identities mine. But if my culture was fully robbed from me, if I didn't know how to speak Hindi and I didn't know where my parents are from and shit, when all that shit happens, you don't realize how connected to the rest of the world you could be. And I think that, when it comes to like black people in the United States, they've got the most riveting case of like, bro, our shit was erased. I don't know where my shit goes back before a motherfucker said get on the boat,
Yeah.
And so
true.
like, I think that like in terms of what y'all are doing with this podcast is one of the things where it's like, yo, they think that they called Brazilian people Indians because they just were like, fuck it, we're just gonna call them all Indians. And I was like, man, that's fucking bullshit as shit. But there is a chance theoretically that the entire population, if not pieces of the U.S. and South America and the Central America, as well as Siberian people, are all fucking connected. And even if that isn't true, just the possibility of it is so interesting to me.
It's very interesting. It's like when you're not looking at white people features, it's like there's a lot of similar features between all the shaded people.
So what I'm trying to say is when a racist person's like they all look alike, I mean, come on, let's be honest here. We might all be kind of the same.
But like racist people also kind of all look alike too. They all got that like scowl, and they're all like fat of some sort. You know what really kind of one thing that really pushed the creation of this podcast was
I want to hear it.
I was thinking about this and I had a conversation with a friend about how like you don't I've never said I love you to my parents or my siblings, and I maybe have typed it in a text
sure
more recently, like in my 30s, and like maybe I've been a little more comfortable to type it in a text, but very very sparingly.
Right.
And like I think about that, like, and like why is that? And then it's like, am I the only one? Because I would just feel very uncomfortable saying that. But like I grew up, and all the peers that I grew up around, they could say that freely to their siblings and parents or whoever, to anybody. And I think about that, and then it's like, okay, this outward show of affection or whatever, is this a first generation thing or an immigrant generation thing, where it's like we're not gonna say these things. We curb any emotional affect.
I think it's a few things. I think that a part of it, if you ask me, is a little bit of just straight toxic masculinity. I think that a part of it, especially for first generation kids, not even from like the parents' perspective, or from the father's perspective, but from the kids at least, I think that growing up, I wasn't like I couldn't look at a dog and be like, oh, you're so cute. Like I just couldn't do that.
Yeah.
And it was because I was like, it's gonna make me look weak.
Right.
And a lot of first generation, like you need to be strong and smart and all that type of like inbuilt, whether it's Asian culture or Spanish or Mexican, whatever it is, that type of like we're new in this country, so you gotta fucking act up type of thing, doesn't allow you to be just like I can be vulnerable with my emotions, because you're supposed to keep that in because you're trying to be strong, right? But I have an experience that's moderately similar where when I was like in I think 7th or 8th grade, my parents, like, it's not like they wouldn't hug me, but they wouldn't initiate it, right?
Yeah.
And so I made a conscious effort to hug them. And for the first little bit, they'd be like, "Get off me, bro!" Like, they weren't like,
"What are you, gay?"
Right. And this is, of course, hugging.
Just to clarify, that's something your uncle would say, or something. I'm not saying that. It's me. That's not my tag.
Love, this podcast is on notice. Very homophobic. They're gonna blame me. They're gonna be like, "You're the guy from the." No, I'm not. Come on.
No. I was talking about the toxic masculinity in older Indian males. Man.
That's right. And so but then after time, they're like, this cat's gonna hug me. It's fine. It's no big deal. But there is a threshold of showing emotions that that we had to deal with, and I don't think that it's necessarily like just an Indian thing. I do think that it's a very just like old school like in the US with American families, I don't think kids that grew up before like the 20s, let's say, had a lot of parents being like, "Well, I love you, son." Like it's just one of those things where um being emotionally vulnerable and available is a relatively new thing in society, if you ask me. And I'm sure people will be like, "Oh, you're wrong because of these examples." I'm not saying it doesn't exist. I'm saying that whether or not it's commonplace is what the issue is here.
You think that comes with the representation? Do we just need to see Indian families on screen saying "I love you" and
A
stuff
hundred
like
percent.
that?
100%. I mean, like in Bollywood media, there ain't no kissing. There ain't
No,
no. There's no gay relationships. There's no. From my experience, I'm sure things must have changed over the years. I'm not trying to say there's none of that,
no,
but
no, no, bro. The filmmakers that do that stuff get mad death threats and they get ostracized. They get
right.
all sorts of crazy.
So when you feel like showing um any sense of appreciation emotionally, man, it's disallowed. And I do think that that's kind of where, like, what back in the day, the duty of a first generation person was you got to be a doctor because I'm sacrificing for you to get to that level, right?
Yeah,
And that shit's happening, but there's a lot more of us now, and not all of us are going to make it right there. So, what is the civic responsibility of people that are first generation in a new nation? I think it's to understand that they need to comprehend how their emotions work. I think that if you have another group of first generation kids that are like, I will only bottle my emotions always. It's like, oh, that's the real fucking up, if you ask me.
yeah. You can't conquer this new frontier that your parents set on until you conquer yourself.
A little bit. And I think that for people that don't have this issue, some of what I'm saying must sound like, no, my family says we love each other because we're normal. And it's like,
Right.
I'm happy and proud of you for having that. But in families of strife, but also in terms of not everyone has that. And for those of us that don't, I think there needs to be an understanding that, like, it's okay that the emotional maturity is not where you want it to be, because anything can improve once you work on it. But if you just go, well, I just never tell my family how I love them, then it's like, I mean, I do think that Indian families, they're kind of like, well, we just know. And it's like, fuck that.
Yeah.
Like, I'd rather get because I, going back to going to India every year, I like had several, I don't know if they're necessarily life threatening, but I thought I was gonna die because of how sick I was several
Yeah.
times,
Oh,
right?
yeah, for sure.
And I remember, my mom, as encouragement from an old school method, when I wouldn't do as well in school, she'd be like, if you're going to fuck up in school, we'll just move back to India. And so the feeling of my existence in a Western culture being temporary was, a thing that debilitated me a whole bunch, because I was like, who gives a fuck what I do here? We're probably moving back to India. I was terrified of that. And it's not like India was so terrible, but, I would have been thrown into a culture wasn't raised in. And um, so I lost my train of thought for a second there.
You're raised in a culture you weren't aware of.
Right, right. But then what was I
The
saying
access to
before?
Western life was temporary, and that debilitated you, your or stunted your growth.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, I thought I was gonna die. So I remember at an early age, I would tell my friends like I love you all the time. Hey, I don't know when I'll see you next, but like I just wanted you to know you mean a lot to me. I love you. And what that ended up happening in my life is I've got friends since I was 4 years old now, because I made sure to maintain those connections because I was aware that this could all be taken away from me at any moment. So
Wow.
that shitty thing made me do something positive from it. And because that wasn't the reality that we ended up moving back to India or anything, I now have friendships that mean more to me than I think, because it's very easy to lose touch with people you don't know, see and stuff. But I was able to maintain that. So, yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Object impermanence is a real thing with people.
Yeah, definitely. I
So,
mean,
do you think you're over? Do you have a lot of cousins and siblings?
yeah, giant family. Yeah,
Okay, so can you relate to them like you relate to your friends?
yeah. Because do I relate to every single one of them?
I
I
mean, is
mean,
there like an air of like, okay, this is a weird thought,
no,
but
go on.
like, is there like a competitive sense, you know, where it's like all information is information to be mined and trafficked in
No,
for
nothing like that. No,
okay.
because we grew up together. So there, I would feel like I would feel so much pain over the fact that I get the opportunity to be in a Western country and to have the opportunities that I have, right? Like I felt like, man, I have to do great because everyone here doesn't get that luxury and I need to do better for them type of thing. But they never looked at it like that. To them, I just was another one of them that was in a different situation. They're very kind. There could have been a lot of like, fuck you for what you got, and I don't. I'm sure, people would be envious, and I'm not trying to say that that never happened or anything, but for this core group of on my father's side and my mother's side of my, their sisters and brothers' kids, there is a mutual understanding of like we're trying to do the best we can, and that's great. There's nothing about I mean, man, honestly, love, you kind of have to ask them because from my perspective, it wasn't that way. But I'm sure that shit must have happened where they were like, man, fuck Yogi and his fat ass for this bullshit. You know what I mean? Like, so I'm sure I was a brat in many ways,
I
and I'm
know
not
he's
trying to
eating
deny
those
that.
Twinkies. I see less of them in the box. I know I can't find the wrappers, but I know he's eating them. I'm talking about
he
my childhood
knows
right now.
he knows that we have Barley with chai, but he doesn't drink chai, so he just eats them all the time.
you, you, just because you have one cup of chai doesn't mean you have to have two sleeves of biscuits with them. All chai you're not eating a chai soaked biscuit cake. you know, but so that's kind of the thought process of like, is there right? So the American dream isn't so much about thriving and conquering or pioneering so much as it is about adapting and surviving, right?
I,
Which to me, like, I don't know how it works with, I don't want to say just South Asians, but like other minorities, other first generation
sure,
and people like that. There's a disconnect between the American dream for like immigrants and then like, and it obviously it's on a spectrum of color,
sure,
but
definitely.
like the disconnect is like, okay, are we entitled to get the American to actually chase the American dream, or do we just have to subsist and survive and adapt until the next generation can achieve that American dream? But the reason I bring all this up is you have a very good podcast with a couple other co-hosts, three other co-hosts that you actually every episode you talk about a billionaire and you go
Mm-hmm.
into the specifics, you provide a lot of information and not necessarily making the connections between the information pieces of information, but you provide enough information for your listeners to infer connections, right?
Certainly.
And which is like, and if you can infer connections between bits of information about these billionaires, then you can perhaps have a window into their thought process. And I think this is very fascinating for the people that listen to the podcast and really check it out. But anyways, I'm ranting. What I want to say is, what I want to bring up was, you have this billionaire podcast, it's called Grubstakers.
That's right.
I want to ask you about the mindset of people that are billionaires, because I'm sure in all your research now, I'm sure you found like similarities in the thought process, perhaps the casual dehumanization or commodification of labor,
Mm-hmm.
and whatever.
Right.
Like I'm sure that's a common trope, and maybe there's a few aberrations here or there, different case studies, but like that and how does that factor in to the American dream itself, right? Like, so is the American
Mm.
dream
Interesting. Yeah.
a carrot or a stick?
Very, very good questions. Just to give a bit more background on the show itself, we started off with the hypothetical question: is there such a thing as a good billionaire?
Mm.
And so far, 200 episodes in, the answer is still conclusively no. And
Not yet, no.
not
What is
yet.
this,
No,
Finding Bigfoot?
that's harder. That's no, it's harder to find a good billionaire than it is to find Bigfoot. But to go to your secondary question of what is the billionaire mindset, ruthless, unnecessary, psychopathic narcissism. I'm better than everyone else, and if people don't get to my level, I will murder them to get my way. Now, you might think, oh, well, this billionaire doesn't murder anyone, and it's like, well, maybe not personally, but indirectly, they're causing pain in the world that is equivalent, if not also murdering people, whether it's slavery,
Right.
sex trading, or just straight up, hey, I'm going to pay you to get my wife off because she ran over a kid and murdered them, but I don't want her to go to jail type of thing. When it comes to the American dream, I do think that we are in a very particular demographic because South Asians in the United States are on the top of the bottom of the tower of minority in terms of wealth.
Right. Model minority.
Right. And so it's very easy for me to be like, we just got to keep on keeping on, brown power, let's go. But the reality is, when I've looked at these billionaires with my co-hosts on this show, is that the thing that stops a legacy is infighting due to wealth.
Mm.
After a few generations, especially if they're a part of the company, people get greedy and they go, well, I want more for me than I want for you. And if I have equal firepower, then I could just take what you got. Now, mind you, that is what I said makes a billionaire to begin with. So in some ways, they're just continuing their family legacy, but instead of fucking over the world, they're fucking over their own family, right?
And we love to see it.
Love it.
We love it. Bro, Succession is one of my favorite shows.
There is more content about the drama of the wealthy elite today than there ever has been. And I do think that the VH1 lifestyles of the rich and famous type of stuff is a bit of the catalyst and the flint and steel to the fire of what we're seeing now, because that shows you everything they got. And then you get about 10, 20 more years into it, and you have like a few scandals here with rich people, right? Like, this person cheated on another person. And then you've built 30 years of legacy families that, in all reality, control everything in the world, but we're focusing on who they fucking, why they fucking, and whether or not they truly like the people they're around.
Right. That's why the MTV Cribs episode with Redman was so revolutionary before its time.
That's right. He still lives in that house, according to him. And the doorbells still don't work. I recently watched a video where he did an update on that house. But that Redman is a perfect example of someone that he's never going to lose what he got because he's not giving himself more than he needs, right?
Say that again.
He's never going to lose what he got because he's never going to take more than he needs.
Wow.
MTV Cribs was renting out houses for people to pretend they balling out.
Right. That's like spending on debit versus credit.
Redman was like, I'm all right. You're going to come to my house. And why will Redman continue? Why will Redman continue to be as profitable as he is? Because his kids won't grow up in a mansion, and they won't think to themselves, I need 7 cars. They might think, I want the new PlayStation 7, but they're not going to think, I need to buy one for all of my friends. It's those little things. And so for the model minority conversation we're having here, what does success in the American nightmare truly mean? You got to take care of your chicken, to quote Marshawn Lynch, but then you got to make sure that your roots understand where they're from. If I didn't spend my time in India and understand, like, people live in dirt, buddy, you don't, so you should be happy for that. I would become way worse of an individual for not understanding or not even be able to comprehend the reality of that.
Right. And yeah, Pacific Northwest, that's like Proud Boy Haven.
It is a proud boy haven, and it's like segregation max. It's like white people live here, black people live there, and we don't mix. And a part of that is built on the fact that you have tech companies up and down the West Coast that promote liberal ideas but have conservative mindsets. And
Yeah.
that's not changing anytime soon. And I remember when there was that Google memo that came out about diversity, and that guy was basically saying women suck. But I remember being like, women being included in groups, especially corporations, isn't diversity, it's equality. And I was like, what do you mean? It's the same thing. I'm like, if you count women as diverse, there could be 5 white women to
Right.
a company and they hire a white dude and they're like, well, we're diverse. And it's like, no, that's not,
If you, yeah,
that's
if you're saying women is diversity higher, then that means you're literally giving up the game that you assume that white men are the default.
right. And so I remember when that shit came out, I was like, nobody's talking about the fact that this cat is literally going, yeah. Half the gender, including them, means that we're good enough. And it's like, no, true diversity is by class. If you ask me, we got a cat that and you can see, like, I don't know about you, but like I think that every person loves like they came from nothing and now they have everything. Not like billionaires, but like even I remember there's this documentary about a Indian individual who gave the untouchables in India jobs working at the public bathrooms that he built, right? And what they figured out was if you create 2 troughs and just a Y unit, you can poop into one, and when that fills up, move the Y thing, and after about a week or a month, that poop that you put in will dehydrate and become fertilizer. But you still need somebody to work in the public bathroom itself. And they had this individual that was an untouchable that was working there, and he has like a small, like, dog, I'm telling you, man, the size of a closet. He's got that as a bed, and he's got like a little mirror and a sink, and he's got his own little area. And I'm telling you, cat, love, I'm telling you, this cat, literally, I'll send you the link if I can find it. This cat was ecstatic. He was like, I got my little bed here, I got my little pillow, and he works he works in the bathroom. You gave the bathroom attendant housing in the bathroom, right? But these are people that spend their lives on the street.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, that guy that mentioned that like he was doing this, he said that when I was growing up, I was so curious about the untouchable people, I went out and I like touched one because I was told if you touch one, like your hand would fall off or it would turn black. And his grandmother beat the shit out of him because he was like, you can't even touch these motherfuckers. They ain't human, right? And so, in terms of what it means for the model minority in the United States as Indian people, you get over that. There is no untouchable race that's going to melt your hand if you touch them.
Yeah.
Forget those ideals. Love the fact that you're brown and the fact that you have Babaji to thank for the Spanish Inquisition, but forget all of this Indian superiority thing and understand that when people mix, especially based on class, that incredible things can happen because of it. But that is it's a long ways to go to have people that didn't grow up with the same backgrounds to see eye and eye and get something positive done.
Yeah. No,
And it really shouldn't be, though.
and I mean, the thing is, like, I think the only Trojan horse for that idea is humor, because, like,
Yeah.
it's a matter of comparing expectations. One thing I think was really really funny was, I don't know if you watched this movie called Year One, like from like a
Oh
decade
yeah.
ago.
Yeah. It
There
was
was this scene with
yeah, I
Paul
remember that.
Shear. I think it was Paul Shear in it, where he was like a slave in Egypt, and they were like, he was also like chained up, and they were like literally in shit, having to move rocks or something. And he's just like, it's like, hey man, how are you holding up? He's like, hey, you can't complain. I'm in the sun. I got the shit. It's good for my skin. I'm feeling great.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
was the funniest thing
It's
ever.
so good.
But
Yeah.
it's literally just like, hey, why is it funny that people are finding silver linings for dire situations?
Cuz I mean, it's relatable in a lot of ways. It's just like if you can't laugh when shit sucks, you're only making the situation worse.
Yeah.
And that's how you survive in the long run. Like your shit's breaking down and everything's figuring out, well, listen, you're not gonna want to laugh about this, and people will do like, you'll laugh about this later, and it's like, yeah, well, right now I'm hurting, but it's like, if you can maintain your sanity, you can find something to laugh about. And I think that, like, it's, like we've been talking about, like, people that are bigots and stuff. I don't think, and this is moderately controversial, I personally think most people that are bigoted or racist are only doing it because it appeases the people around them.
Mm.
Do you know? Do you know about
Are you
the
talking about
monkey?
Candace Owens again?
No, but just sure, why not? But all of them really.
Right, right, right.
But do you know about the monkey banana ladder experiment? Do you know about this?
No.
So there's an experiment that happened where they had a banana on top of a ladder in a group full of monkeys, and they all had shock collars, right? And so when a monkey would go up the ladder to get the banana, the scientists would shock all the monkeys, right? And then the monkeys would figure that out, and they would. So anytime anyone tried to go up the ladder, they just beat the shit out of that monkey, right? But then they would take one monkey out and put a new one in that doesn't have a shock collar, and that monkey would be like, "I'm gonna go up," and they would beat the shit out of him, and they just did that over and over and over again to where none of the monkeys had shock collars. But anytime one of them tried to climb the ladder to get the banana, they would tear that monkey down and beat the shit out of him. And so, in a similar way, I truly think that most people that are like, fuck this group for whatever reason, they're only doing that to appease what they think is the social norm around them. Oh, why do I hate black people? Well, I go to a church, and the people that work there, I know that behind closed doors, they also feel this way. So if I align with them, then I can, this, and that. Like,
Yeah.
I, I, I know that seems very far fetched because people are like, no, I've dealt with a racist, and it was just them. And I'm telling you, man, I really think that truly the worst behaviors are human, are only enhanced and conditioned because they believe that that's how the world wants them to be.
I'll tell you what that reminds me of. There's this article a few years ago about this guy. I think the article is called "The White Flight of Derek Black." I don't know if you read that. It was like in the Atlantic or something. But this kid, his name is Derek Black. He, I think he grew up in Mississippi or whatever, somewhere. He was
Right.
David Duke's godson.
Gotcha.
So grew up heavy in the racist piece of shit world that's big in media, right? And what he was like a smart kid, and so before college and everything, he would lead these conventions or whatever, or he'd speak at the racist conventions that are probably in Mississippi, places like Mississippi, Jackson, Mississippi, and stuff, which is where I'm from. But he would speak at these conventions and like help have them like try to re-articulate their ideas instead of saying the N-word, why don't you guys just say welfare queens,
Sure.
right?
Sure.
Like,
Yeah.
here's how you reframe all these issues. Let's reframe this as an economic
Right.
thing,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So like he did all of that. He did all of that in coding. Then he went to college. Little bit of exposure to different ideas because he's a smart guy. He was able to reframe all their shit that they still use now, and
Yep.
they got a president and whole government out of, right? So
Right.
like because of that, he went to college, got a little bit of exposure, and now the whole article is about how he can't undo the work that he did.
Wow. Yeah.
He cannot undo the work he did. He still has that family that's really deep in the thing. And so it's called The White Flight of Derek Black, in case anyone wants to look it up. I don't know if we can link it. It might be behind a paywall, but I'm sure there's just pay for it.
For your listeners, one of the things because we do a lot of paywall research, but we don't always pay for it. One thing you can do is when the page is loading, you click show reader view, and
Oh, yeah.
sometimes that slips you under the paywall. So it doesn't work for all of them, but it works for most of them.
Yeah, and there actually are some TikToks that show you like things you can go into the source page and just edit like a couple of
Yeah.
lines of
Mm-hmm.
code, and you're able to
Yeah.
get behind so many different paywalls. Which is another thing about I love TikTok for that reason, is because I guess there's just too much to monitor that like people are just putting out like, oh, here's this life hack for how you could do
Yeah.
this, and here's a thing to do this, and here's like, and then it's like literally that K-pop band was able to
Right. Right. Take down the yeah. Mm-hmm.
which has led to it getting banned, or
Mm-hmm.
the trial balloon of saying this is going to get banned so that we can sell it to our crony
Right.
company.
Right. It's crazy how useful of a tool it is,
Mhm.
and yet that's also like it's very similar to the internet in that when utilized correctly, it allows humans to prosper and enhance their life. But also at the same time, it proliferates softcore pornography and probably is involved with so much pedophilia.
Oh,
Sorry, yeah, I mean, sorry to make
oh
this
no, that's
point a
true.
downer, but like this, that's
Let me bring it back into abstract. My I have a friend. My friend put me on to Alan Kay lectures a few years ago. You know who Alan Kay is?
I don't know.
He was part of Xerox PARC. Way back, he came up with a
Oh, big guy,
graphical
yeah,
user interface that I guess Apple and IBM and all that they
yeah,
basically ganked. But
yeah.
he
For any of your listeners that don't know, this was Xerox's think tank that essentially made the computer, but then Xerox was like, "That's not a printer. We don't need that." And then people like Bill Gates and Steve Jobs and people that worked at IBM were like, "This shit's cool. We should do this at our place." Yeah. Sorry, go on.
no, so basically what is this guy essentially, right? He's essentially a thinker, right? He comes up with a
Yeah.
graphical user interface. So he's still around, bro. He does like mad lectures about education and stuff like that. And what he talks about, he talks a lot about like, this the interface of this is designed for babies, and there's literally so much capacity and capability in there, but the way we interact with it. Oh no, I think you froze.
Um.
Press. All right, I just press record as well.
All right. Cool.
So
Alan K.
one. Oh
GPU.
yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. You're going
1,
2,
3.
4.
Okay, awesome. Uh, so anyways, yeah, we're coming back. We just had a couple of technical difficulties. Anyways, what we're talking about is Alan Kay,
Mm-hmm.
Kay. He Xerox PARC, right? The big think tank, all this stuff. He invented the graphical user interface. This guy's a thinker, right? So he does a
Right.
lot of lectures and stuff, and you can watch these YouTube videos, and it's basically he just drums on the same thing over and over and over. But talking about how the user interface that he designed that really hasn't ever changed much. It really
Mm-hmm.
like it's everything's still drag and drop. You
Right.
know, uh, it's designed for babies, so it's absolutely so intuitive that you don't need to learn anything to learn it. Why do you think we're so
Ah.
apprehensive about droids? It's still kind of a similar user interface, but it's not, so it's designed for babies, and but the thing is, imagine the group think consciousness we would be able to unlock if we had a more sophisticated understanding and ability to use our tools.
Right. Yeah. That I see what you're saying. Yeah. And that is 100% correct. That, we are limiting ourselves by remaining in the past when it comes to what it means to function as a human society.
Yeah, and like one thing one metaphor, because I love metaphors. One metaphor he loves to use is like, imagine growing up for generations at the bottom of the Grand Canyon, right?
Yeah, right.
Everything around you, it's a rock formation, so everything around you is different gradations of rock. So they're
Right. Right.
brown, pink, brown and pink, brown and pink. Everything around you is brown and pink. You look up, all you see is blue because it's sky, right?
Right.
Blue than black, but it's blue. There's no other context for the blue that you see. So when people think about like technology or whatever, he talks about like Moore's law, Moores or
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Moore, Moore's law, where it's like, you know, the technology of the future exists today, but it's just more expensive and you got to buy it now in order
Right.
to monopolize that production of the technology in the future, whatever. But like in terms of that, in terms of this metaphor specifically, it's like you can spend your whole life knowing the brown and pink around you and like the different consistencies of the rock and the subtleties in the rock, but you don't necessarily understand anything. Because if you're like, well, I want to go towards that blue, because nobody understands what the blue is, but I
Right.
see it, you
Yeah.
know? And so, and people around you will be like, no, that's fucking insane because everything is pink and brown. Have you ever heard about anybody going to the blue? The blue? No.
Right.
You
Right.
know,
Doesn't
so
exist. Yeah.
right. And so it's like how what a crazy person to think
Right.
that they could go into the blue. And so, you know, actual thinkers, people that like dedicate their not I don't want to say dedicate their lives, but like maybe are in positions to be able to think for a
Mm-hmm.
livelihood,
Right.
right? Like Alan Kay, right? They're the ones trying to chase blue essentially, and we are so caught up in people that love to show the narrative of them
Right.
chasing blue. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
we love the narrative of chasing blue, but the people that
But not the
chase
results.
blue, right? But the people that chase, well, we benefit as a society greatly over generations over because of the results. But like, but like the people that actually do chase blue, they aren't really good at crafting personal narratives about them chasing blue,
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and
Yeah. Yeah.
that
Yeah.
becomes a huge societal disadvantage to that. Why Xerox PARC? It wasn't IBM. You know, all sorts of why these billionaires aren't the ones that were the thinkers chasing blue, or are they? I mean, in your research, do you find?
Some people think they are. I mean, it, do I think society benefits from billionaires more than it detracts from the world? No, I really don't. I think that the true innovators aren't people that have everything comfortable. Does
Yeah,
that make sense?
that
I
makes a lot of
really,
sense.
and it's like, okay, so nobody that's from any amount of money can do anything innovative? No, obviously that's not the case. But if you don't, if like I tell you that, oh, my car door jams a little bit, and you're well to do enough where you're like, just buy a new door, you would never think, well, if we just jimmy rig this, the zip tie will work correctly. Like, a zip tie isn't innovation. Like, it's not like you didn't invent the zip tie, but you have to solve the problem without throwing money at it. And a
Yeah,
lot of what makes this innovation and chasing blue, like you're describing here, happen is, there's a great story of, I believe it's GE, and they would have like an electrical test about that was impossible. It was like a hazing ritual that they did at GE, and it was like make a light bulb that's contained within something. And I think the thing that came out of it was neon lights, maybe. I'm not exactly sure, right? So please, I'll apologize for my negligence here for the story. But they hired someone in I think 1930s or 40s, and they're like, hey, you got to do this task if you want to work here, and the motherfucker did it because he didn't know that it was a prank. He didn't accept the limitations that the people above him thought existed. And because of that, he's like, I need this job, or whatever the reality was, he was able to create something that didn't exist. Now, the question of, do billionaires do that? I don't know. If GE doesn't exist as a company, then this person isn't hired, then this and that. So like I comprehend the argument for people believing billionaires will solve all the problems, but I think that when you look at something as simple as, for Ferrero Rocher and Nestle to make as much money as they do, they use people that have been trafficked across border lines to then pick sugarcane and cacao, and they utilize slave labor to allow them to make that much money. Okay, well, how much would it cost for them to sell? It would be 30 cents.
And they make
If
the
they did,
mothers
if they
dependent on the breast milk too, don't they?
right. And so I don't think that the billionaires are chasing blue. I think that if we're honest, they want to keep people in the brown and pink because chasing blue makes them irrelevant. Like
Right.
making society function better is not in their best interest. And this goes back to what I was saying earlier about like the people that have bigoted Zionistic views. It benefits them to be in the group that says that these things are true. And that right there is more powerful than like being correct. Like if everyone in your company drinks Blue Powerade and your boss talks about how great Blue Powerade is and you show up with a Gatorade and then everyone's like, I don't know if I trust this person. And it's like, because
Dude,
I'm drinking a different sports drink, it's like, well, we're a Blue Powerade family here. That doesn't matter. But all of us have gotten in line with this person's thinking. So you coming in with something new hurts us now. And then it's like, it doesn't hurt you at all. You should probably try Fanta. It's even more delicious than Blue Powerade done right. Hell, mix them together. Who cares?
It's like how embarrassed before the result did that one person feel at Jonestown who was like, nah, I brought my own water bottle, dog. Oh,
Yeah.
man, I should have done that with everybody. Oh, well, never mind.
I like yeah, I think that when it comes to, it's very easy to look at a aristocracy and think that they benefit the world from the good that they do, and I'm including billionaires in this conversation. But I think people care a lot less about the queen when you realize, oh, she's benefiting from millions of people dying and trillions of dollars coming to her bank account. And the reason you and I speak the language we do is because anyone that didn't before us and didn't fall in line would be murdered if they didn't.
Hence the Queen's English.
Precisely.
Mm-hmm.
So, I do think though that the master's tools will never dismantle the master's houses. So it's like us doing this show among us building things within the Western capitalist culture. Does this allow us to break down the structure? I don't know. I'd like to think it does, but I often talk about this on the podcast. Like sometimes I worry that somebody that is a decent person would listen to 200 hours of us saying, oh, these people got rich because they had access to money at a young age and were ruthless enough to, kill their way to their riches. And they think, okay, now I need to do that. Like, how do I know I'm not creating future people that want to become billionaires from my show? I'm trying to do an abject of good, but theoretically speaking, there is a world of people that go, oh, apparently you can just murder your way to the top, and then people will forget that once you're up there. How is that good?
It's like the opposite of the representation we're fighting for, because it's like we need to see the pathway for ourselves for becoming enlightened individuals, but you are providing a pathway for depraved individuals to become powerful psychopaths.
Theoretically,
you have a Sith training camp.
Does it make me money in the long run? Who's training who?
No, you just hold all the Sith ancient texts.
That's right. I'll burn this shit down if you cross me.
Anyways, thank you so much for coming on, Yogi.
Hey, I had one more thing. If you're running out of time, that's more than fine. But I have something that I want to drop on y'all. But it'll take a moment.
Please.
Okay.
Please. Oh, right. Yeah.
All right, so you and Samir on the episode y'all talked briefly.
First ever episode, by the way. Check it out.
y'all talked about Rudyard Kipling, the man that wrote the Jungle Book, as well as several short
Well,
stories.
the
Even
man who is credited as the author for the Jungle Book, we
right,
will
even
see if whether
though
or not he wrote it or not.
right,
We
even
don't.
the letters that he wrote says that I probably stole that shit. And before this episode, I actually watched a little bit of a documentary that talked about his upbringing and how he was born in at the time Bombay, and then went to the UK and lived with like cousins or something, and then the mom in that family would just beat the shit out of him when he was 11, and then he moved back to Bombay when he was 16, and then joined like the local like paper basically for the military, and everyone that was white would leave Lahore when it would be hot. And I looked at the weather; it is like 115 to 118 degrees Fahrenheit during this time period. So they'd be like, "Fuck this, we're just going to the hills." But when Rudyard Kipling was like 18, 19, he was like, "I'm just gonna stay," and he would cross the boundary between white Lahore and actual Lahore, and he got into opium and pot and just fucking prostitutes. So this is more information that I thought I was gonna get into on this little piece here. But I just learned
And
that
he
from
wrote
this
the
document.
best children's story for
But from that,
ages.
he started writing fiction. His first fiction was about an opium addict who was like, "I'm gonna die, but I'm gonna keep doing opium." But that's when he figured out, oh, fiction allows me to say the truth without having to be journalism, right? Anyway, so Rudyard
You
Kipling, we talked.
encode everything into a metaphor,
Right,
and
right,
that's how you achieve your own catharsis and perhaps broadcast catharsis for
yep,
so many
yep.
people who may be able to decode.
So the question I had for y'all, and I'd love to ask your co-host this later point, but Rudyard Kipling basically steals parts from Indian people, a story about Jungle Book, which portrays Indian individuals as savages, right? The motherfucker's got a Western bent allegiance toward the British Empire at the time, and is a piece of shit, right? Then you have decades later Walt Disney, who worked with Nazis, slowed down the progress of equality with female animators at his corporation, as well as many other things. But
This was
he
before
creates
Disney Plus.
this is pre Disney Plus, yeah.
Right, right,
He creates Jungle Book,
right.
and it's one of my favorite Disney movies, unfortunately. And that the writers for Jungle Book, they did a draft over Rudyard Kipling's version, and Walt Disney supposedly said, "All right, how many of you guys have read this book?" And none of us had raised their hand. And he threw it in the trash. He's like, "Okay, good. We're gonna make a better movie now." Basically, like, because he was like, "This book is too fucked up. We just gotta make a good children's movie." Disney's running out of money, right? Because this would be the last Disney movie that would be with Walt Disney at the helm, because he would die right before it was released. And this movie was so popular, it got Disney to make their money back. This is why Robin Hood has similar animations, because they had no money. They were running out of money. They used the 101 Dalmatian animation for the wolves in the beginning of Jungle Book. All right. So now the question is, and this is what the main thing we're trying to get across here, right? If you don't have capitalism, and Rudyard Kipling and Walt Disney are allowed to just focus on their bigotry, do they succeed in making their worldview of white people are great and brown people suck as people, but because they made children's movies and children's book, they were focused at chasing money instead of making sure that their bigotry was something that was maintained. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, because I mean, well, also, okay, two things. Um, First, I feel like if you're peddling propaganda, maybe it's not necessarily like bigoted propaganda, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
no, I don't want to say propaganda. If you're peddling bigoted thoughts,
Right.
money isn't necessarily relevant if you can package it as propaganda because you see the effect of that. Yes,
Right.
that operates within a capitalist system, but it's also its own system of having to like peddle in propaganda in itself. It permeates society differently. So, like, yes, there's a propaganda, and I'm sure, yeah, there's a lot to be argued and to be shown about Disney Nazi propaganda and all this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But having children's movies, things like that, that in itself is a way to do things, garner goodwill and build your war chest,
Right.
right? Is the war chest you need for in a capitalist system, but even in not in a capitalist system, even
Mm-hmm.
in a smash and grab system,
Right.
you need wealth. You can create your own micro capitalist system if you hoard wealth. Like that's how, that was like the first agent of colonialism in India was, the Dutch East India Company, and one of the guys on it, this guy Robert Clive, you know, basically just started hoarding a little money and then got private mercenaries, all the blah blah blah.
Right.
Boom. Look, oh shit, I'm creating the path for how this can happen. The other way I want to relate it, take the hate out of it, uh, as a comedian, right?
Sure.
You're going on stage every night to maybe not necessarily peddle your message, being like, yeah, the things that I think and the way that I focus thoughts or need to be heard by the world. Maybe it's for, hey, I need to eat, so I need to be on this gig. I'd love to be on this show. I need to get better at doing comedy. So a lot of comedians don't get paid for years.
Yeah.
And this, obviously. You didn't get paid for years.
No.
Right. So you have to have a day job, right? And so the kids' movies are basically Disney's day job.
Right. I see what you're saying. Yeah. Okay.
So
yeah. It's something I've wrestled with for 10 years. I don't know the answer to. It's just a thought experiment. But I really question if they are allowed to just focus on fuck these groups of people. I'm gonna be better than them, and I want to make sure that everyone knows that.
They wouldn't have. They have to build a coalition. Capitalism is a tool to build a coalition, so as not to alienate them when you're Trojan horsing in your bigoted ideas.
But does society then benefit from them needing to build the war chest before they can do those things? I guess not then, huh? Because then it makes it so that it allows them to have the capital that they need.
Right,
by
social
doing those
capital
things.
and monetary capital, all sorts of things. Right, Disney does a Mandalorian and does Star Wars, and then they can also do mass graves.
There isn't. Yeah, well, that is true. But
I don't know if they do that. I'm not saying Disney does mass graves. I really want you to pick up this podcast, Disney, please. Like, I want to be on the network, and I love you guys.
Okay,
Disney World is great.
I'm going to say some shit that's going to get you banned, because sorry about that, bro. We did a 3-part series on Walt Disney and the Disney Corporation, and in our third part...
What are the episode numbers, if you can recall offhand, in case...
I believe it's 130... I can't, just look at Walt Disney Grub Stickers.
Right.
I don't fucking remember shit. In the third part, though, because this was our Christmas season...
right.
I spent maybe 45 minutes, love, going over every single pedophilia claim that Disney has covered up. And it goes as, love, the most outrageous one is Disney Cruise Line would do snorkeling events on Little St. James Island, the Epstein Island. So... And you want to be like, oh, that's kind of fucked up. That's not that big a deal. The CEO of Disney at the time was connected to Epstein, and let's just say he's not there anymore. But I'm telling you, love, the amount of things that I found about Disney and the level of peddling they do to maintain their image, and so they're willing to sacrifice those kids. There's a line in a rapper No Name's song where he says, Christmas is the route to cancer, and in that same vein,
Christmas is a what?
Christmas. I don't make sure I get the stupid line right.
Oh no! Oh no! Oh,
I'm so sorry.
Oh no!
At Christmas is the route to cancer.
Okay, Christmas is the road to cancer.
I'm so mad at myself for not knowing the stupid line. Who gives a fuck? Anyway, all I'm trying to say is that if Walt Disney doesn't create the Disney Corporation and just chooses to be a guy that says fuck Jews, then you don't have thousands, if not tens of thousands of kids being raped by Disney. So it's one of those things where I am conflicted as to what it means to pedal. But then again, I'm making my own argument not make sense anymore. So now I'm not happy with how I phrase anything today.
Well, the benefit to be extracted from the Christmas movies, the highly capitalized commercial holidays that we have, and I don't know, I wasn't talking to you about it on this episode, but I talked about it on the previous episode we had with Kunal,
Right.
and just about logging different moments in time in terms of your own personal narrative and personal history as nostalgia triggers, right? Like being like, oh yeah, like I'll encode different sights and sounds and smells into how I'm feeling right now by eating this kind of food over and over, so that
Right.
4 years from now when I eat that food again, it's a nostalgia trigger for this moment in time, so I can remember how I
Yeah.
thought, whatever, things like that. But with that, all of these intellectual property devices and things that are created, like Bambi, all of these things, people get some sort of connection with, they might associate it with happy childhood memories or whatever. But basically, Disney is essentially a data company creating this raw data for people to turn into their own nostalgic triggers. You know,
Yeah. I completely agree with you. I know of people that are like adult Disney fanatics, and they I mean, it's clearly like, yo, I had a good moment in my childhood and they involved Disney, and so I can't deal with reality, so I need to go to Disney every year. And
right?
it's, you know, I've seen posts with people who are like, was going to Disney during the pandemic and being pregnant worth it? Yes. And it's like, bro, what? But that is what the system breeds. It breeds people that don't have enough empathy to allow themselves to connect with their family, and it makes it so that they look at capitalism, they look at escapism as the only way to feel good about themselves. The lyric that I misquoted earlier, I'd like to say right now, love. It is, I know cancer's origin linked to Santa. I know Santa's origins linked to money, mass production of cattle, slaughtering for the yummy. So, No Name Song 31 for you. But that is,
Can you say it again? Can you read it
all
again?
right, is I know cancer's origin linked to Santa. I know Santa's origins linked to money, mass production of cattle, slaughtered for the yummy.
Wow.
Yeah, she's great. No Name's awesome.
Yeah, no, I don't know anything about No Name, other than, well, first of all, I don't know her name. But like, other than the J. Cole thing,
Sure.
that's the level of media consumer I am. Other than, like, I
Yeah,
guess
you know
J.
the
Cole
Twitter
was being very
beefs.
patronizing.
You know the Twitter beefs.
I know of that Twitter beef because it transcended Twitter.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, uh, she's someone that I think is a perfect example of how do you function in this culture without compromising your integrity. And so a few years ago, she had like a NPR Tiny Desk and made a few albums, but then she was like, this doesn't get shit done. I can put what I just said like in my songs, but it's not concrete. I'm just making it so that the people above me get paid and I have to work tirelessly to reach what I want to reach. And so right now she has started like a socialist book club, and they read very very great moving books. I've read a few of them, and like that isn't nothing, but in terms of capital, she fell off, and it's like she's literally trying to redistribute knowledge. How can that not be a greater cause?
Aaron Swartz.
Yeah, but that's in this culture, if you ain't stacking stacks, you ain't doing enough. Yeah, it's the poison of America.
The poison. There you go. There's our title. Right? How do you feel about
Yeah,
that title? Yeah.
sure. I
I
used, if you want to do that, I also feel free to use that. I used to say America is toxic, but it's mostly intoxicating. because that's how it feels.
Can I use that as? Should I use that as a title?
Whatever you want. I don't.
No, that's probably one of your. That's a bit you have.
No, it's just a line I got.
That's a line you got. I don't want to use that as a title. The Poison of America should be the title. I mean, if you're listening this far, you can have that kind of like cool moment and be like, "Oh yeah, oh that's the title. Oh, now it makes sense." No, but The Poison of America. How did?
Great. That sounds perfect. I think as somebody who has never fit the mold in this country, I am more than honored to call myself the Poison of America.
Oh damn, yeah, that's right. Because on the thumbnail, it would look like because your name would be right above the title.
I don't
of the
care.
episode.
You're telling me
The Poison.
you're telling me I'm not. You're telling me I'm not the American Nightmare, motherfucker. I show up to go up, man.
So maybe I should make the title Yogi Paliwal, The Poison of America, parentheses, just to clarify, that's a metaphor.
Sure. If you want to make it that long, feel free. Yeah.
I think I have to, no?
I think you should go the other way about it, and you should do no dash. You should go Yogi Paliwal, parentheses, The Poison of America, and people will think that you're calling me out. Like,
oh shit. Oh yeah, and then I guess if you're watching this far, it's just an Easter egg.
Yeah.
And if you want to cancel me, then
well, I think people will come for me, and then they'll listen to the episode, and they'll be like, "Well, I mean, that guy doesn't really say anything I disagreed with." And guess what? If I did say some shit you disagree with,
yeah,
good.
You're on to me. All right. Well, thank you so much for coming on. Yogi Paliwal, Grub Stakers Podcast. We can find you on your social media. I know you don't really care too much for, but it's your social media handle is
I'm Yogi_Paliwal on Twitter. If you look up Yogi Paliwal, you can find me. I beat the rest of the Yogi Paliwals in the world for the SEO. But yeah, if you go to yogipaliwal.com, all this information's there. It's a comedian's website, so it's not updated as much as it should be.
Yeah, it really doesn't work, actually.
No, yeah. Well, thanks, love. I appreciate that.
As of the recording of this, maybe not as of the release of this episode.
It doesn't work? My website doesn't work again?
No, it didn't work for me. Like, no, the website works, but literally any tab you click on, no information comes up. It's just like the background.
Oh, yeah. It's like a startup that doesn't exist. Oh, yeah. It looks really nice, but none of this shit's... Yeah, actually, it doesn't. It is down. I gotta fix this shit. Okay.
I was like, there's no content. But anyways...
Oh, you know what I think it is, actually? It was built on Flash, and I think they just disbanded Flash, so...
Oh, yeah, because that makes sense, because I would imagine, I'd imagine that's some sort of, like, immigration error. Not like immigration like people, but like immigration between systems and stuff.
Bro, but it just looks like my face is just looking at the person that's using the website.
Everything you click,
and then none of the links work. Nothing works.
I was like, oh damn, I gotta prep this episode.
Fuck, Adobe fucked me. They got rid of Flash. All right.
But now you know, and you're gonna probably renovate the website and probably renovate a lot of other shit in your brand, because it's like one of those tinkering things. The last thing I'll leave you with, it's like that one cold open from that episode of Malcolm in the Middle where Hal is like, he sees a light bulb go out, and then at the end of the whole montage, Lois comes back and he's like working underneath the car.
That's right. Yeah.
He's like, "Did you replace the light bulb?" He's like, "I'm working on it."
Yeah, that's completely true. Once this website's fixed, nothing else will get done, probably.
Right. So that's how I feel about production and brand building. So anyways, thank you so much for coming on, especially in our infancy as a podcast. And we really, things are gonna be dope. And we've had conversations outside of this recording that have been really helpful to me in terms of thinking about the direction of this podcast and what can be.
Well, you're welcome. You use the term conversations, but we've only spoken once before this. I want to make that
That's true.
Clear on the record.
Okay, I included. I guess. Well, yeah, no. I guess it was only once.
I guess we said.
Yeah, I guess it was only once. Yeah, I guess.
I don't want the audience to think that we've been hanging and banging and slinging for a long time.
This is the first time I'm seeing Yogi's face, other than when I went to his website, and that's all I saw.
I'm looking at it. It's like my own eyes looking back at me, and I'm like, I don't know how I feel about this. I'm in love with you, but I don't love you. but you arm me, but you're the
It is
past
a
me.
bold, creative choice.
You know what? I don't know if the audience wants to see this, but you know what? It's the end of the show. Who
Let's see
gives a
it while
fuck?
it's there, because I mean, it's gonna. I'm sure you're gonna have. Yeah, it's a perfect background image. If you had
It's like it
content
looks
over it,
good. Like
yeah,
it's not bad.
it's a
But
good
yeah, no,
shot.
it the website like used to have drop down pages. You know,
Right.
it used to work.
No, I figured like it looked nice, and it was just like, oh, okay, this is just a website issue.
I gotta yell at a webmaster now. All right. Anyway, this has been great. I really enjoyed this. It was
Yeah,
very nice to come on. I'd love to come back anytime y'all want me. But thanks for
absolutely.
listening to the end of the episode. But yeah, if you want to check me out, just look up Yogi Paliwal. I'm on Twitter and Instagram and all that other shit. I'm not all that active on that stuff because I don't believe in content creation. I believe in lasting conversations between humans that want to function in a society that's better. So yeah, but I really appreciate being here.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for watching. Check us out at returnthejewels.com or on social media at returnthejewels to watch more videos. You can subscribe right there, or you can watch a random video right here. Like, share, and subscribe. Tell all your friends.